and also abroad. So this is a brief about Krishi Gyandeep, and this basic philosophy is to reach the last mile extension functionaries, because they cannot directly interact with these outstanding professionals in the field of agriculture. So we would like to record their experiences, lifetime experiences, and send them the videos and the links, so that they will be able to get inspired, motivated, and then become more useful for the field of agriculture. So with this brief background, I welcome all of you to this session. Now I request Dr. Chandrasekhara, our beloved Director General, to introduce today's esteemed speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Jaya. Good morning to all of you. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the audience here today. There are representatives of EEI, Samitis, some of the state agriculture universities, ICR organization, national network, and national facilitators of manage, family faculty, and other staff members are present here. I would like to extend a warm welcome to every one of you. It's my privilege to welcome Dr. Suresh Chandra Babu to give this very interesting talk in Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. Of course, my colleague Dr. Jaya shared with you what is the Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. The last mile extension worker lives in villages, works with the farmers, and day-to-day basis he tries to address the challenges faced by the farmers. The job of an extension worker is not a cakewalk. It's a very adventurous every day and every interaction. So while delivering his job, Manage Like institution would like to not only refresh his knowledge, empower him, but also inspire him to address the challenges on day-to-day basis. Apart from empowerment, this inspiration is also very, very important for extension worker. The very purpose of Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series is to inform and inspire the last mile extension worker by sharing the lifetime experiences of outstanding extension professionals. The grassroots level extension worker, they don't have any access or platform to directly interact with outstanding professional. Manage creates this platform where these two people meet and exchange and learn, get inspired to carry forward the mission of strengthening agricultural extension in this country. So this is about the Krishi Gyandeep Marriage Knowledge Lecture Series. About Dr. Suresh Chandra Babu, it's a privilege for Manage to have Dr. Suresh Chandra Babu today in this lecture series. I would like to briefly introduce Dr. Suresh Chandra Babu. Suresh Chandra Babu is a agriculture graduate from Annamalai University, Tamil Nadu, and he passed BSc Agriculture with the first rank. He's a gold medalist. Then he pursued his Masters in Agricultural Economics from Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Coimbatore. Later, he went to Iowa State University, USA, completed his Masters in Economics, Doctorate in Economics, and he joined Cornell University as a research economist. Later, he served the government of Malawi as advisor on a food and nutrition information system. During this 5 years time, he also he worked very closely with University of Malawi and developed computer-assisted online courses, which are cost-effective and learner-friendly courses in a very small country like Malawi, which is a great contribution. Any developing countries can adopt that. Later, for next 26 years, he worked with several organizations, including World Bank and many reputed international agencies in South Asian countries and Sub-Saharan African countries, assisting them to strengthen agricultural extension systems. He authored more than 24 books, 107 research articles. He is also in the editorial panel of reputed agricultural extension and related journals. He is also visiting professor to several universities in South Africa, then of course our IGNO in India also, and one university in China. It's a great privilege for all of us to listen to Dr. Suresh Babu today on global good practices in agricultural extension management. So thank you very much for sparing and agreeing to deliver this talk. Welcome on behalf of Manage Family. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jaya and Dr. P. Chandrasekhara, for your kind introduction. And it's always a privilege to come back to Manage. I'm not new to Manage. I've been there physically also for several years, collaborating with you all, and also online since past 2 years we have been interacting as well. An important topic or global development. It is where, as Dr. Chandrasekhara said, you can have global goals like sustainable development goals or even climate change related goals like we recently saw in Paris Agreement and COP26 in Glasgow. All these goals have to be translated into action on the farm. And if that action has to happen on the farm in order to meet the goals that we set for ourselves, whether it's the global goal, national goal, or in the context of India, the state level goal, district level goal, and community level goal, or panchayat level goal for that matter, farm level action has to be there. Otherwise, there will not be action. We can have the goal, we can have the plan, we can have all the programs, but we cannot report back that things have changed on the ground, that we have achieved our goal. So in order to make the plan happen on the ground, on the farmer's field, on farm families, the crucial actor is the farm extension worker. And that's the introduction very nicely Dr. Chandrasekhara gave why we need to inspire and educate and empower the extension worker. I started my career as an extension worker right after my undergraduate degree, and that inspired me to not only work in extension as a practical extension person, but also to start thinking about innovative methods of designing extension programs. And that led to studying extension policy. And also now I am looking at in various countries how extension systems are operating and how we can help these countries in order to modify, also even innovate within the system to come up with new models of extension management. So the topic that is given to me is not only relevant for global development, it is also very close to my heart, because this is what I've been doing for many, many years. So I will now, with that brief introduction, I will go into the presentation itself, and then we can come back and answer the questions that the participants may have. In the context of extension, again, there has been a lot of changes in the global level. The obvious change, one I can say, is the use of information and communication technology. And we will talk about that more in terms of managing extension programs. But that is actually revolutionizing how we can reach farmers. And that revolution in the last even 5 years has put extension workers in a different place. Not only in the context of receiving information from the researchers, but also for them to share the information to the research community. And in that context, now we are talking about one good example is operating drones, for example. It has become common to use drone in agriculture. Although that relates to a little bit of a mechanization and also using drones for particular reason, particular purpose, in terms of taking aerial pictures of the farmer's field and sharing that knowledge back to research, or even using drones for spraying and so on. The programming and operating drones, for example, as an example, is and teaching the operation of the drones to the farmer. Imagine an extension worker has to gain that knowledge and teach the farmer, has immediately put us into the situation. Will our extension worker be able to do that? It is highly technical related work area. And that means, quickly, I'm giving this example because it quickly tells us that we cannot have the same kind of training that we were giving extension workers for them to perform in the field now with the changing information and the technology. If we don't bring them up to that level of what is needed to deal with the problems, either it is technical problem or institutional problem or a managerial problem, we'll talk about that. We are going to leave our extension workers behind. And what is happening right now is, as a result, the public extension workers, not just in India, but in several emerging economies as well as in developing countries, we see private extension coming in a fast way, because they are able to quickly adapt, train their workforce, and then employ for a particular purpose for which they can use the extension workers. So there is this balancing act of how public extension can still contribute to the vulnerable groups, to the smallholder sector, to the sector that does not grow the commercial crops, for example. The reason why I'm saying commercial crops, because the commercial crops particularly have high level of input going into the system, and also private companies coming in buying the outputs for their purpose in terms of quality and so on. And in that context, they already have an extension system that is supporting farmers. So the context in which the extension itself is changing. More and more private sector is coming in because of the commercialized agriculture. They are able to bring in the companies which supply the input, which also brings the extension force along with it. We know that from pesticide industry, for example, in India, it has been a long history where pesticide representatives who sell the chemicals will already be talking to the farmers how to use those chemicals. I mean, it happens, right, in that industry. But these things are very common in commercial agriculture. But on the smallholder agriculture, where they grow 1 acre or 2 acres, they are still dependent on public extension. So that's where the role of public extension becomes very important, and managing public extension systems and programs become particularly fundamental. So the second slide is outline of the presentation, and there I present the motivation for the presentation itself, and then we talk about the broad trends in extension and advisory services. I just started talking about that. I gave the example of the drones, I gave the example of commercial agriculture, and so on. And then we will talk a little bit about models of market-led extension. This has been very common now, the move towards market-led extension, because the common extension, as we knew, were technology-oriented. And we used to even say technology transfer. And that word itself is becoming obsolete now. It's not one way of transferring technology. It is also the both ways of sharing knowledge and learning with the farmers, right? That we have been seeing for a long time. Then in the context of this presentation, I will talk about global experiences. Some of you may be interested in learning from what other countries are doing. In fact, India, I would say, from our research, India is a forerunner in extension. There is no doubt about it. In particularly in the context of emerging economies, in the context of the developing countries, India has a lot of innovations. We have done a lot of innovations for a long time. So that itself, I take Indian experiences to other countries usually when I present in other countries. But for this presentation, I will also share other countries' experiences in how countries are managing extension. And we'll do some concluding thoughts. There is a picture of ladies sitting around a young man. And that picture is taken in 1982. And the young man is your speaker sitting there. That was my first extension job. Luckily, in those days, it's very rare to take extension picture. But this particular work I was doing, a photographer was able to come to the field for some data collection, collecting data for the government. And he clicked this picture, and then he was actually able to share a snap of that photo later on. And I kept this picture very precious as a motivator for me, because with this job that I had, extension worker job, I really learned what is extension. Although we did study in theory in the courses, but this is where I really learned what extension is. This my job was to bring nutrition-oriented agriculture in selected villages of Tamil Nadu. And this village is about 70 kilometers south of Chennai, where we introduced what we now called household gardening for nutrition program. In those days, it was also household gardens, home gardens for nutrition, but with organic kind of cultivation. So that means that we will not be able to, because in the small gardens, you cannot use pesticides. You do not have a lot of other fertilizers lying around, because farmers usually use that for field crops. So we have to come up with a method, what we called biodynamic gardening. And you probably now you call that as regenerative agriculture. Some people call it precision agriculture, but precision agriculture involves also chemical use. But this is more like a regenerative agroecological approach to agriculture. And just to make a story short, this is where I felt the need for, I was going to be a breeder for those who know the agricultural education system. This is right after my undergraduate. But eventually I was going to go to graduate school, postgraduate school, and study breeding. But then I changed my mind, because there were a lot of good breeders in India at that time, but translating knowledge from the research to the farmers were really lacking. And this job really gave the motivation also to study, postgraduate degree. But then I came across an economist while working as an extension worker, and that economist really posed me a challenge. Suresh, you are trying to educate the farmers, but the farmers have very small plots. For example, the maximum area holding in that we call large farmer in that village was 2 hectares of land, which is like 5 acres of land. So he said, even for that large farmer, if he can come up with a plan that will, for rest of the whole year, we advise him to grow plants and grow crops, or give him a cropping pattern or cropping planning that will feed him, all the children, all the family, 365 days in a year, that will clothe them with the material that they produce and employ them. It's more like a village level economy that Gandhi was talking about, self-sufficient economy. So it was very interesting to me, that concept. And I said, how do we do that? How do we plan and guide a farmer to grow everything within the 5 acres of land that you should grow for food, the fiber I talked about, and also fuel to cook the food, and have water conserved, and can have aquaculture and livestock and poultry, for example, so that all the nutritional requirement for the family is met. It's a very interesting challenge. Even now, if we call them as integrated food security system, or integrated food system, integrated farming system. But that challenge was practical for us because we wanted to introduce that for various sizes of the farmers. Then the extension knowledge in terms of transferring knowledge, method of showing demonstration or communication skills that we gain in extension was not going to be adequate. So I had to rely on economic principles to make the farmers prosperous in terms of choosing the right crop choices, right technology choices, and still guide the farmers to, within the limited area, to have the income, the food security, the nutritional status, and to some extent conservation of the nature, soil quality, and also have a space for agroforestry, for example. So and part of that is home gardening here, what I am teaching to the so in that context I have to shift slightly from my extension orientation to agricultural economics. That's why I went and studied agricultural economics in TNAU. But when I studied agricultural economics, I kept the farmers in mind, and I kept the extension workers in mind. What does the economics research, economic applications will give eventually to the farmers and to the extension workers practically to apply on the ground? And I'm still working on that kind of issues. We'll talk about that as we go along. And I show quickly the motivation of the lecture because the focus is more and more now market and profit orientation in farming. And everybody talks about agricultural extension need not be just technology transfer. It should also have marketing perspective. That means we can really see that is happening in Indian context. In the last 2 years, we talked about, or few years, we are still talking about enhancing farmers' income, doubling farmers' income. And one way to double farmers' income is to work through the market led extension, right? So they'll think about it in a 3-way approach to market led extension, which is happening all over the world. It's not just in India. And you can already see that if we can help the farmers to reduce the cost of input, and that's where extension and economics meet. So extension worker needs to know how we can reduce the cost of input so that farmers' income can increase. Extension worker needs to know how to increase the productivity of the farmer by giving right information at the right time, and that he already traditionally has been doing, right? And the third aspect of the extension worker to help farmers to increase income is to find the right market, right aggregation point, right processing value chain, and the right price for the product. So in a simple kind of calculation, from the economics point of view, if you can reduce the cost of cultivation by 1/3, increase the productivity by 1/3, and improve the price the farmer gets by 1/3, then you can actually double the farmer's income. That's a simple kind of formula. It's a 3-legged stool, right? You have 3 legs. One is input cost, the other one is productivity, the other one is the consumer price, the price for the output, right? So extension, now you can already see, goes beyond productivity increases. We have been talking about how to increase yield, lab to land, and all those things, demonstration. They all look at the demonstration plot and so on. They all look at the productivity aspect. Right now, we have to go beyond that. Market orientation and market-led extension management becomes crucial now. How do we go from where we are now, or we are already doing that? Okay, in India we are far ahead, but I'm putting that in the context of Indian policy right now. Then I'm looking at the slide of this recent book that may be useful for, it's a freely available book in our website, IFPRI website. And it is the book that brings all the global experiences, global knowledge in extension together. And I joined hands with Kristen Davis, our extension expert in IFPRI, and another colleague, Catherine Ragasa. We collectively pull this book together, content together, for mainly benefit of the participants who are attending this lecture series today. So let me quickly, so it is available on the web. Note down the title and Google it, and you put my name into on top of it, you will get it. Actually, you can download the book and save it as a PDF version, and you can go through the content. And most of the presentation I'm making comes from this book. Next, two more books that recently was published from my collaborators that I worked with. And you will see that the green colored book is called Knowledge Driven Development, in which we have several models of extension and the global level, global lessons, particularly from the private extension context, private extension point of view. And that is the case studies are available. It contains about 12 different case studies to look at. In fact, in India, I will present some of the case studies from India, so you can connect to the content of the book. Then the other book is How Do We Really Reform Extension Systems? It goes beyond the innovations we do, tweak it here and there. It has to be an overall policy reform that we need to look at. So we look at all the South Asian countries, what they are doing in that book, that yellow colored book, and it's also available. It's a recent book as well, so you have recent knowledge on that. So basically, put together, the three books that I shared should have lots and lots of information for managing extension programs in the context of what our participants are doing. So I can, but the presentation itself that I shared has a lot of information from those books. The next slide actually shows the transformation of agriculture, various stages of transformation, and how extension policies should also reflect that kind of transformation. For example, in the 60s, when we were just introducing green revolution technologies, we were worried about increasing productivity among smallholder farmers. And we talked about how to bring in irrigation, we talked about how to increase extension, how to introduce chemical fertilizers, how to introduce hybrid varieties of seeds. So this is coming from a subsistence kind of farming system to the more advanced technology-based agriculture. And that system is still continuing in many countries, right? We are still struggling to achieve green revolution in Africa. In many countries that I work with, even that basic green revolution that we achieved 30, 40, 50 years ago is not able to achieve in African countries. So there are certain countries in that category. And then moving on to India, I would put Indian context. We are transforming economy. Okay, India, Bangladesh, and countries like, to some extent, Indonesia, Thailand. They're all kind of transforming economies where we are moving from this subsistence agriculture, which is commercialized, which is very highly technology oriented, to a more market oriented through institutional reforms. You are seeing the three laws that we had last year, which were revoked, unfortunately, in my opinion, brought in several institutional reforms. And that is fundamental for transformation of agriculture, transformation of food systems. And that brings us opportunity for moving labor out of agriculture through mechanization, for example. Also bring in more institutions into agriculture for aggregation of commodities, for processing of commodities, for exporting the commodities in the regional and global markets. You can already see the farmers producer organizations which were working towards that kind of goals is a good example in India of that, right? But those organizations, that the transforming kind of countries require different types of extension system, right? Compared to the green revolution extension system we talked about, which I practiced 1982, for example. And then the third set of countries, you can put Australia, European countries and US, for example, Canada, and even Japan, in the transformed economies. They are really highly mechanized. Their marketing systems are far advanced, in the sense you have futures market. The farmers are able to know the price that they will grow 2 years in advance. They fix their price 2 years in advance, and they are able to go into precision agriculture, reduce the cost of cultivation extremely well. And they are also coming back to regenerative agriculture, for example, in many cases, conservation of soil, water, and other natural resources, right, that matter. And the agriculture is also not just one purpose of producing food. It is also multi-purpose in terms of ecological restoration that it contributes, eco services that it provides. Right, in that kind of transformed economies, you will see a different type of extension system. So the extension system should change as we move along. I'm presenting this because we are changing transformation in the Indian context already. So I kind of came up with this diagram to translate that knowledge that I just shared with into a slide, how extension transformation can happen. I talked about the policy level transformation. Now, macro level transformation of agriculture. I'm talking about extension transformation now. So if you look at the 3 stages that I talked about, the agricultural based, the green revolution type of economies, the transforming economies, the transformed economies, you will see the various interventions or various institutional opportunities that we have in terms of public extension, NGOs operating in extension field, ICT in agriculture, the public-private partnership, for example, pluralistic agriculture, where different types of extension coming together, working together, private extension, and human resource management, for example, right? They are all, and now we're talking about farmer-based organizations, right, in India. And all this also change how we use them, how you use extension in this kind of settings also change. For example, the pluralistic agriculture will start emerging during the transforming stage, the first dark black line, if you see, where many actors and players will play their role. And then the pluralism goes down when the transformed agriculture is, if you take, for example, in the United States, you don't see that many public extension workers, okay? And it is not pluralistic. It's just mainly driven by the private extension supported by the university extension or the county extension, very in a particularly ICT oriented way. For example, if I have to take care of my lawn in my front yard, in my house, that lawn, for example, the grass growing landscape architecture comes under the county extension. So for whole county is equivalent to district in India. Imagine for the whole district, there is only one county agent or only one extension agent who will pick up the phone and call back. And that's the condition right now in the transformed economies. The labor that is put in extension goes down. Very few people operate as extension personnel, but farmers themselves are able to directly access information from internet, from on for example, if I have to choose a grass for my lawn, and that information is completely available in the University of Maryland, the state I live, I go to the University of Maryland cooperative extension system, it completely tells me videos, everything is there. I download and see what kind of grass I should grow. I'm not a farmer, so I'm using the grass as an example, okay? Same thing for farmer in Maryland. He wants to grow dairy cattle, for example. He can completely get that information. And then on top of it, you can reach out to the professors who are doing dairy research, and they are also available. They're extension professors in the universities, specifically for extension, connecting research to the farmers. Okay. And so this is that stylized trend. For if you take another example of ICT, it goes from use of low ICT to high level ICT. The private extension, for example, it goes from low level to the high level of private extension, right? So we have seen it. Okay, so that's some kind of introduction for you. I'm going to go a little bit faster now. And so in terms of extension role in rural transformation and at the global level, we need to understand the extension drivers and characteristics of this extension and how they perform and what outcomes and impact this current extension is making, and how we can come back and modify the characteristics of extension so that we can perform better. Okay, so that's the idea behind the whole thinking about how we can manage better the extension system. That's anywhere, any country you go, this is the broad framework, right? We want to use the minimal extension available, the budget that we have, the people that we have, and other resources that we have, infrastructure we have, to maximize our benefit for the farmers. So that's the idea behind extension management in general. And here I'm talking to a group of right very close to Hyderabad where you are, and I'm talking to the farmers in Telangana some time ago, in order to understand their extension needs. What is that they are looking for from an extension worker? And so that can feed back into what kind of extension system that we can design. So this kind of discussions with the farmers, relaxing with them. We are just sitting on the Panchayat Union office, and we just they put a small sheet of plastic sheet, and it was a 3-hour discussion about what are the real issues of the farmers. And of course, it's only male farmers we were able to talk to because of the cultural challenges. And eventually, I went to female working groups, what we call women self-help groups in the same village where I was. I was able to interact with women also, but I could spend more time with the men. And the extension worker who is sitting next to me, luckily I can speak Telugu. So I was able to interact with them very nicely. So this kind of interaction for extension thinker or an innovator is very important. It's not only for extension worker will give you information. You can also go beyond the extension worker, last mile worker, to the farmers themselves to bring the information. I'm moving on to the slide that is called current trends in global extension. I talked about it a little bit. I talked about the drones, for example. I talked about the commercialization of agriculture, for example. But in the global level, this is a picture I took a couple of years ago in my favorite country in Africa, Malawi, where I spent 5 years, when I went back to study extension there. The extension services needs are constantly changing because new actors and players are coming into the picture. So public extension has to kind of say, hey, now I don't have to do the same thing that the sugarcane company is doing, right? Sugar company, I will give an example of that in India. Sugarcane companies are taking over extension in sugarcane for the most part. So we don't have to employ a public extension worker in sugarcane production, particularly if it is sugarcane supplied to that particular company, right? So I'm just giving an example. So it is changing. Research is needed continuously to update our knowledge. And that's the example I gave you before. How do you do research in extension? You go to the field and find out what is really needed, and then come back and see whether we can, what are the evidence gap right now? What are the knowledge gap right now? What are the research gap right now? And how can we fix that so that we can tell the policymaker, we can tell the extension manager to modify the system, right? And you need the evidence. Without that, you cannot simply give suggestions. So it may not work, it may work, it may not work. So we also need to understand what works in the field. So food system is rapidly evolving. You can see that now. There are a lot of value chains. COVID is a good example of how it affected the food system as a whole. And accordingly, we are now not talking about even agricultural transformation. We are talking about food system transformation. We are talking about climate change, climate smart agriculture in line with COP26 now in Glasgow. All these things coming together. Climate change is coming, natural resource management, sustainable agriculture, food security, ecological agriculture, nutrition. We have to achieve nutrition goals, inclusiveness, women, youth, entrepreneurship, and marketing, value chain development. All these things are part of agricultural system transformation, food system transformation. That means we have to kind of think about how are we going to handle all these goals that we have in front of them. So extension system need to be at the global level. The trend is how we can transform the system according to the needs. So expansion of high value agriculture is speeding up extremely high. So how do we train our extension workers? I'm going to the slide that called market-led extension global models and experiences. This is where we come to the quick examples of various countries. I just want to quickly go through this evolution towards market-led extension that has been happening. That means you need a proper organizational structure, you need proper service delivery changes to meet that needs. And at the same time, you have to see who are the actors and players, the pluralistic extension I talked about. And I will present some specific examples from different continents so that we will learn how things are happening in different parts of the world. But I said India is a forerunner in innovation in extension. There is no doubt about it. Not because I'm coming from India, but we have done a lot of work in extension, including Dr. Chandrasekhara, for example. They've all been thinking about extension, market oriented extension for a long time. How agrarian policies have changed in the Indian context, or it can be applied even to China or even Brazil. It's a common kind of diagram. It can apply to Bangladesh as well. See, in the early 60s, all the countries jumped in for different types of extension models, starting from 1940s or so. Think about it, Indian case, after independence, right? We started thinking about various rural integrated rural development models, India integrated area development models, all those things. And then we focused on this green revolution model and the irrigation extension, the subsidy for the fertilizer and pesticide, and procurement with the minimum support price. All these policies came together to produce what we call green revolution. And then after that, that's what we call second phase, right? After the first phase of more or less subsistence agriculture, original agriculture, local variety agriculture, if you want to call it that way. The 65 to 84, it's really a green revolution period, right? Where this economic policies and conventional wisdom was challenged, and a lot of technology transfer happened, right? So in the 84 to 90, it was a period where things were floating in the success of green revolution. It was working, but if you recall, for our purpose, the training and visit system was introduced in the early 80s, and I was also part of that, and I learned quite a bit on TNV model, which I'm still able to talk to rest of the world, how India did very successfully the TNE model. But in the 90s, because of the budget constraints, after the Green Revolution, after the World Bank finished the project, we didn't have resources, and the states did not have really resources. If I remember, even sometimes state extension workers were not paid in time at that time. So we slowly cut down our extension force. We were not hiring people because it was going to cost a lot of money. And then, of course, we started thinking about new systems such as Atma, you name it now, right? We have so many different ways of looking at extension right now. And agri businesses came into picture. We are also having agri clinics, for example, the value chains, and all those things started coming in. And now Atma is in almost every district, right? Although it started on a pilot basis. So you see this pattern of the engagement of agrarian policies. That's still useful to think about. Then comes value chain. And what is the role of extension in value chain? That is the new trend right now, right? You have the big companies, food markets, which are buying from farmers. Pepsi, for example, in India, McDonald's, and other Walmart, you name it, right? The companies, the retailers, particularly who are selling in the urban sector, and they need processing and packaged vegetables, for example, or agriculture products in general. And that has to come from an extension system that is not only technically oriented in transfer of technology, but also it should be interested in aggregating farmers to help them to get credit, organic certification sometime, helping the farmers to get equipment rental, right? Even the system should produce its own seedlings and supplies so that the quality, I will talk about that in some case studies, the quality produce is maintained, right? So that there is no contamination, and high level researching linkages and irrigation system. All these things are now happening as we speak. We move from farm to fork. They're all happening and connecting retail stores and wholesale markets through the processing and aggregation and value chain information. So how does that now relate to extension? So that's something that we are working on even in Indian context right now. I'm working with Niti Aayog and other colleagues to think it through more carefully in the context of food safety and regulatory systems, processing systems that is harmonious, so that we can have not only Indian markets for our products, but also the regional South Asia market, our BIMSTEC market. BIMSTEC goes beyond South Asia, except Pakistan. It covers Myanmar and Thailand as well. All right. So that area we can actually operate very nicely in a harmonious manner. So we are doing research with colleagues in New Delhi on that. But extension has to play an important role. Now, moving on, my slide shows technical services provided in a market-led extension system, right? So in various stages of production, extension has to play the role. And we know that for a long time. But in this slide, I'm putting it very in a concise way, from starting from land preparation at the bottom to planting seedling and disease control, irrigation, weeding, and quality testing for maximum price that is available. So segregation of products for quality testing, and collection and transporting vegetables, and processing vegetables and reaching the consumers, right? So various stages of production requires different types of extension services. Okay, that needs to be delineated in order to manage the extension. You can't be doing the same extension in all the areas. Okay, if Tanjavur or Godavari district, for example, is a production zone, and your urban center, even take for Hyderabad, is the consumer center, you got to modify the extension employment of extension services in differently for different purposes. And that could include contracting and integrating farmers, mobilizing the farmers, like I talked about, aggregating the farmers, connecting them to credit information, connecting them to irrigation companies, bringing micro irrigation subsidies to the farmers level, and making sure it is happening. All these things are right now happening, but then public extension system itself needs to kind of adjust their personnel, adjust their staff members, manage the resources effectively. Even within Atma, we can do that. And there are some examples that I can show. I'm now switching to country level examples. I'm showing quickly Bangladesh, what we did. In terms of Bangladesh, we kind of connected farmers. You see this Rangpur in that Bangladesh slide, which is in the northern district or northern region in Bangladesh. And they have to bring fresh vegetables. That's where the most common vegetable growing area, potato is growing extremely high, eggplant and so on. They have to reach Dhaka within a matter of 4 to 5 hours in the morning. And there is a huge, the road highway is there. Of course, it reaches every day. But the operation of the value chains, for example, is really interesting, and how the extension workers play their role. In fact, here I'm in a kind of a small unit in a village where village extension workers work with the farmers to produce quality seeds, and the seeds are supplied, seedlings rather, eggplant, brinjal seedlings. It is supplied throughout the farmers in the field, in the village, and it's also aggregated. The extension workers help the farmers to aggregate, clean it, and also segregate it according to different sizes, and pack them, and then put them in the cold storage, and it within 4 hours, early in the morning, they are reaching Dhaka central markets. Okay, so that's an example I wanted to show, and it's a very interesting growth sector for Bangladesh, because more and more companies like Pran, it's a huge company that has translated this kind of value chains into export. Now, if you go to Dubai and other Middle Eastern countries, you will see prawn packed vegetables in the markets there. They are also reaching out to, by the way, European markets. Okay, And there is quite a bit of lesson that we can learn from that. And extension workers play a very important role connecting this processing company now to these farmers that I talked about in Rangpur. I'm moving on to what insight I learned. I already explained this, but more important thing is not only guiding the farmers in increasing the productivity, but also quality, not only in quantity of production, but quality of production is very important for market extension, but also aggregating to see the needs of the consumers and engaging the youth. This is one of the opportunities, particularly for youth to come work with the extension worker, bring them to the fold of how they can be employed and in a new value chains that are emerging. So the extension worker has expanded its role beyond technical production. Okay, so but output aggregation is always a entry point for that kind of extension. Let me go to Indian example. Here we have throughout India, we have collected case studies. And of course, there is no dearth of case studies in India, right? I mean, right outside Hyderabad, you will find very innovative extension happening. That's the beauty of India. It's a multicultural, sectoral kind of situation on the ground, and still innovations are happening, right? All the time, innovations are happening. So how do we capture that? This young lady is a leader of a woman self-help group, and she won. Probably you all know her from seeing the picture. She won 2 years ago, I think 2018. She won the Young Farmer Award from President of India, Rashtrapati. And I wanted to go see her. How this young lady is able to. I'm sitting in her house with my assistants, and we had a wonderful time talking about how she mobilized. She became an extension agent, for example. Young entrepreneur she became. She is also leader of the self-help group. She put all the self-help group women into seed production, and then they started selling the seed to the farmers in the neighborhoods of their villages, and made quite a bit of resources. And on the top of it, her own production, maize production, won the national award. So she was able to also adapt new technologies in the crops that she was growing. Anyway, that is a good example to think about. And here like I said, I meet with a lot of farmers all the time. And I'm sitting here in Tanjavur district in Tamil Nadu. At one point, we conducted 27 focus group discussion for various purposes to understand what is the information need of the farmer, how women perceive the information need from an extension worker differently from the men, and what are the gender gaps in terms of understanding extension relationship, and how women extension workers play a better role in terms of reaching out to the women in this rural areas. Anyway, what are the farmers willing to give? They're willing to give the time. And even now, if you ask farmers to pay for extension, it's still a challenge. That's why public extension is still an important role to play, whereas private extension people, they gain that uh, payment for the services through the prices that of the products that they sell, right? So now I want to give a quick example of EID-PRIs. And like I said, EID-PRI in Kadalur district in Tamil Nadu is one of the very old sugarcane company. They produce confectionaries and they about 80,000 hectares of land they cover of sugarcane. Small older farmers completely giving 24/7 attention, and you can call anytime. Farmer can call 24 hours a day or stop by in their extension centers they have established. And after studying this extension system, I came to a conclusion that my classmate actually was a deputy director of agriculture in that district. So I asked him, what is the point of you doing extension work here when this company is doing extremely very well? So he said, no, I don't do any more extension in sugarcane. I go and take care of the cashew cultivation. Cashew is also a big sugar crop. So he was the system was very clever to adjust. They put all the public extension into cashew production, right? Because subsidy in cashew production came in. So I'm just giving an example of that. So we need to be managing extension differently as in this sugarcane example. Jain irrigation system, for example, is another good example of how they entry point is irrigation, micro irrigation, but how they use that as a point of entry for extension, grow vegetables here in the context of Jain irrigation system is a very good model of how a micro irrigation industry has really developed new system of extension for water management. Next is the surveys for organic production, right? Organic rice production in Jammu and Kashmir. We looked at it very closely in terms of how the extension system changed when you go from inorganic production to organic production, because there is a huge demand for organic basmati rice, for example, in the Western countries and even in India now. And so how do we change that system? How do we modify the system is an example. Some quick lessons I will come in a minute. The Marico example of Safola oil is another example. We looked at how to integrate the value chain, supply chains of oil in the context of extension. Some key insights, like I mentioned about this youth and participate, the young lady that I talked about, right? In that context, for example, you can also think about self-help groups as a participatory approach to extension. I'm sure it's happening. And I learned that it's a quick way of reaching out women farmers, particularly who are growing specialized crops. Input supply in right timing, right quality makes a big difference. Marketing outputs in the urban areas by connecting farmers, and also demonstration of farmers, right? The original way of doing extension, for example, one of the oldest ways, demonstration, is the best way to do extension. You can't get away with the not doing demonstration. So that's one good example. And in the context of India, how do we balance this public private partnership is something that we need to think about in extension. So I use this set of slides for also teaching others in other countries as I teach extension management in other developing countries in Africa and Asia. Now I'm going to Vietnam here. Vietnam is a classic example of how they captured world market in export in various crops. They were number 20 in rice exports. Actually, rice was not exported that much in the beginning of 90s. Now they are probably only next to India right now, number 2. They even beat Thailand in terms of rice exports. And they are exporting catfish, cashew. They're number 1. They're number 1 in many commercial crops. That's a small country, Vietnam. How were they able to do it? Because they made their extension system into a joint stock company. In the farmers owned company, which employs extension workers rather than government extension worker working for them. And that really transformed the extension system in Vietnam. Quickly giving another country example, here Nigeria really put a lot of effort in transforming. I'm still helping Nigeria. The work is not done. I recently wrote the extension, helped them with the refining the extension policy for Nigeria. It's a huge country also. And I learned quite a bit in the context of Africa how to work with people. Here I am standing next to a young producer who started with nothing. Within 3 years, he is supplying yogurt to the capital city. Throughout the retail stores, he is packed yogurt, dairy yogurt. It's like Amul product. He produced it on his own by starting with one cow few years ago. And how he did that? Through engaging extension system. He hired a lot of private extension workers to work for him, and they put their effort in order to have dairy farmers, Amul model, basically Amul model, but extension through dairy extension. Quality input, quality output, processing, and get the product cold storage to the city. Before that, even yogurt was imported from Europe in Nigeria. So this man he came to see me, and we spent almost a day learning about his system of extension. I'm moving on. Nigeria also concerned about cocoa, for example, as a commercial crop. Nigeria, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, they're all cocoa producing countries. Smallholders produce cocoa. We also produce cocoa, right, for Cadbury's, for example. Our farmers do produce. But in the context of Nigeria, they produce cocoa, and all the cocoa goes to Europe. and they make chocolate, and the chocolate comes back to Nigeria for consumers. So they wanted to have the system that they produce chocolate within Nigeria, which is still struggling, but then that required different types of extension. So I studied that extension system as well, how to supply quality cocoa from smallholders in time, so that the cocoa factory can be producing chocolate throughout the year. And that's another example there. And here I'm kind of working with the what you call joint directors of agriculture in India. And this I collected the joint directors from all the districts of Nigeria. They call it actually state now, all the states of Nigeria, and we plan the extension systems. And so I have a method of planning extension. How do you, for a particular agroecological zone, how do we plan extension? And I want to go back to this 1982 photograph I put in first when I started. And that knowledge of working with the farmers, planning extension for the village community in those days is what is I'm still building on right now in the method of showing how to conduct, how to plan for extension system, both in terms of investments that we need, capacity we need, governance mechanism we need, and the personnel and the training of extension. All this need to be planned in order for government to allocate budget. In the context of India, Atma is a very good example of that, right? So you can see all these things are kind of packaged in Atma, but Atma is only one part of Indian extension. It doesn't solve all our extension problems, right? But it's a very good part. And so just to give an example of how practically we are helping different countries based on the knowledge we have from India. So this is an example. And I'm standing with the Commissioner of Agriculture for Nigeria. You call it Commissioner, same British system. And the key extension directorate officials. The key insight there is the transformation towards private sector could be an opportunity for a lot of rural youth who are unemployed in Nigeria. That's what we are doing, particularly bringing the entrepreneurship model and training lots and lots of youth to go out there and start their own enterprises, and they become the extension workers for farmers themselves in the areas. So that model is what is being followed in Nigeria. Kenya is another good example of exporting their vegetables to European market. Again, Netherlands played a huge role in terms of training extension workers in Kenya, because they wanted quality products in Netherlands markets. So they came and put even glass houses and trained farmers and extension workers to do that extension. So that's an example from Kenya. The Brazil is a commercial agriculture, as you know, it's a huge commercial agriculture, but they left the agrarian farmers, what they call agrarian farmers mean subsistence farmers, behind. In fact, their subsistence farmers own even up to 10 hectares of land, okay, anywhere between 2 hectares to 10 hectares. And this farmer, you see a white farmer, is a German origin, but he is a subsistence farmer according to Brazilian system. The mother is standing there, the farmer, the young man is standing there with his son, and the lady in the blue jeans pant is the extension workers. She's trying to explain, and I was taking a picture, this picture. And this farm is an example, particularly for us, as a large farm in India, for example, which is trying to become commercialized. Is trying to become, so for advising these farmers to design an extension system for these farmers, they invited me. Brazil invited me as an expert. In fact, I later found out there are so many experts in Brazil, just because I have gone out of, out to many countries. They kind of brought me, particularly from Indian context, they wanted to learn. So here, I spent about 3 to 4 years helping them. This is the state I took as a study area for state of Parana, and worked with the local agricultural universities to study what is happening in agriculture. But we use this model in different states. And Brazil has a pluralistic extension system, where they are actually, imagine, the government says, we don't have any more public extension workers, but the public extension worker who is retired and sitting in the village can actually apply for a grant and run an extension in the village surrounding the village where they are sitting. So the extension workers who is 55 years old and retired, he comes back and apply for a grant, and he runs a small extension entrepreneur. He becomes, and he shows the results to the government. So he shows the reporting system, how many farmers he met, how much he has to come up with a work plan. He has to come up with, so the public extension now becomes a regulatory agency, supervising agency, rather than delivery agency. So this is it's a good model that is emerging, and I was asked to evaluate that model, and it is going on right now for agrarian sector, which is smallholder sector. But on the commercial sector, they are still looking at the value chains, the kind of this is the packaged vegetable company that I visited in order to understand how they procure. It's Rio de Una. Procure the vegetables from farmers, help farmers in extension. The model I already showed, it comes from Brazil, without wasting much of the time. I already talked about how farmers are connected to the global value chains like Walmart and McDonald's and Pepsi's and so on, and reaching out to the rest of the world. And we did also a few case studies in Nicaragua, but very limited. Nicaragua is very behind in terms of extension workers, but system. But they also have some innovation that is going on in terms of meeting the nutritional requirement. And how do we focusedly change the knowledge base of the farmers in a smallholder sector? Quickly, let me finish by saying the broad policy recommendations on the extension management, global lessons, involves this. We need to have an extension policy. Of course, India has extension policy. We revise that quite often, and in line with the agriculture policy, which is in line with the national development policy, for example. But the extension funding and investment needs to be planned very well. And that is very important, extension funding, and also coordination between the state and the center, coordination between the center, state and the district level coordination. This is all very fundamental, and we see this coordination becoming very, very important in terms of delivery of extension and management of the extension. And finally, we talk about it all the time, extension has to be demand driven, but unless we really understand the needs of the farmers, we cannot make extension demand driven. So that's why spending time with the farmers who are doing different things all the time and who are also organizing themselves differently, that could be a lesson for us in terms of policy level. But in terms of specifics, we need to be improving our monitoring systems. And of course, Manage has done a lot of good work in that area. I have interacted with Manage colleagues on this as well. And training, Manage does quite a bit of work, as does many other institutions in India. Dr. Chandrasekhara was in another institution a while ago. They used to do a lot of marketing extension and extension training for extension workers. So we do, in Indian context, we do have quite a bit of training institutions. Even in Hyderabad, you will see a lot of institutions, right? So, but the participation of farmers and stakeholders is very, very important. Now, farmers-based organizations are emerging, and we need to bring them in. And I already talked about digital use of technologies, use of digital technology. That really requires different type of managing extension, different types of skills, and that will help to meet the emerging needs of extension. Some policy lessons for Indian extension services. We need to really thinking about the involvement of the marketing systems. How do we involve various types of markets, retail markets, urban markets, the rural towns, right? The second level towns, they are also urbanized. They are urbanized completely. And then the panchayat level, big villages, how do we take care of them? So the extension system has to evolve. Value chains is a good approach to do that. The NBOs that we are talking about, the NABARD supported 10,000 farmer producer organization is a very good example of how we can go extension in that direction. And also we are talking about resilience of farmers. How can we improve the national resilience strategies in the context of market extension, so farmers can adjust their cropping pattern, cropping planning, and according to the needs of the community, needs of the consumers, and also conserve their agriculture, right? So to be climate resilient, multi-sectoral approach is needed. It's not just the Ministry of Food, Ministry of Agriculture, the Rural Development Ministry needs to be there because youth empowerment comes in there, and the Ministry of Commerce and Trade because we are worried about the regional harmonization of agriculture. So we need to be working in a multi-sectoral way. Tracking investments is very important. Skill building is important as well. And also agricultural vocational training of rural youth, for example, can lead to quite a bit of opportunities for creating extension type services in rural areas, aggregating products by youth, aggregating inputs supply for youth. I was in Jharkhand, for example, and rural youth are just hanging around without one of the poorest states, of course, without jobs, and that's also lead to other forms of antisocial kind of system there, right? So we need to really focus on bringing youth in agribusiness as well. Finally, institutional lessons, public extension system need to be open a little bit more to the market orientation, recruit new breed of extension workers. As we retire people, we need to bring in new technically oriented, drones. I gave an example, right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, bring in new type of extension. And that's exactly what I was giving as a lecture a couple of days ago, no, just last week in one of the Indian universities, when I talked about we need to change the curriculum of the extension to meet the emerging needs. And of course, a partnership with the NGOs that are on the ground. I talked about this, women self-help groups, for example. How do we build them up in order to building the youth, bringing the lead farmers from them? Good example, I studied that lady in Uttar Pradesh. I gave that example, for example. How could you train the how could youth be trained for output aggregation and input supply? What institutional mechanisms are needed? And how can we even modify Atma as we go along? We should ask that question. And programmatic lessons, of course, various, I mentioned already Atma, various programs that are on the ground could be thought of in terms of extension demand. The agri clinics, for example, soil health card, for example, and where are we in those? ARIA, for example, where are the in KVKs? How KVKs play the role in extension differently? And I produced few papers with the KVK scientists on their extension systems in Orissa, for example. Aquaculture extension is a good example. How aquaculture, as we introduce, the KVKs can actually train a new breed of extension workers who are focused on aquaculture, for example. So that kind of programmatic approach needs to be there, not only at the national level, but also at the state and decentralized levels. The growing role of private sector, we need to recognize it's coming in, and there are a lot of precision agriculture companies that are emerging. And I met with already quite a few youngsters who are starting their own companies to meet farmers' needs. And they are using cell phones. As you can see, this young lady in the field, take the pictures, take the data, collect the data, they bring it to the precision agriculture kind of, they analyze the data, and they give the data back to the farmers to plant. And that is emerging. And how can the extension system take advantage of that is very important. Increasingly, agricultural extension is becoming pluralist extension where substitution and complementarity is very high, and coordination becomes a need for effectiveness. Natural resource constraints, a new pandemic like COVID, how do we handle that in the extension context? Extension workers cannot go out and meet farmers because they have to wear the mask, or they cannot bring the farmers together because they cannot come together. And we are doing quite a bit of research on that, how we can also innovate in the context of ICT use. Emergence of opportunities and use of big data serving marginal farmers is a key message that we need to send. The farmers who are left behind without commercial agriculture, how do we protect them? How do we supply information? How do we, the Brazilian model I talked about, smallholder farmers, commercial farmers take care of themselves, but for the most part, otherwise they would be commercially failure, right? So smallholder farmers, when they fail, there is nothing to hold on for them. So extension has to play a very important role, public extension particularly. And so in this lecture, we saw global discussion about extension system, how it should focus on market engagement. Extension policies and strategies need to be explicitly recognizing the role of markets in rural areas. Extension systems cannot operate in isolation within the ministry, right? It has to spread not only within the ministry, research, markets, marketing system, but also it goes beyond the agriculture ministry. Multi-sectorally, work with other ministries. Key is training extension professionals. Just to reiterate, they should be the social entrepreneurs, right, of the future to guide the farmers. And we linking the value chains that are emerging is very critical in various crops and livestock fisheries enterprises. Private sector encouragement should be there. We should allow private sector to come and operate, but provide the regulatory services for them from the public sector. We should be watching input dealers, what they are doing. There are still challenges in input dealers supplying input pesticide because of the incentive system the private company is giving for them, right? They sell more and more what they want to sell rather than what farmers need. Those are the issues that are still out there that we need to use extension management properly to address them. And reorienting extension to save resources, improve efficiency and effectiveness is the main objective of extension management, not only in India, but globally. With that, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to give this lecture to all of you. And I will be happy to take questions and answers. And I answer the questions as much as I can. But I thank Dr. P. Chandrasekhara, who has been a very kind manager for me in terms of inviting me wherever he is going and using my services. And it's a pleasure to come back to India always to present what we learn from outside. At the same time, learn from you. You are the experts on the ground. And I learn a lot from managed colleagues all the time, talking to them. As an organization that has done enormous amount of work. And I see some of my colleagues on the screen that I interact with. With that, let me turn it over to you, Dr. Chandrasekhara and Dr. Jaya. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, sir. You took us into the global arena of extension. And now I request all the participants to ask questions if you have any, please.
Professor Suresh Babu garu, I have a question. I'm from Manage. It was really an enlightening and wonderful session that you have just taken on different models of agricultural extension. And especially in the context of doubling farmers' income, you have identified three-pronged strategy: reduction of cost, increase in productivity, and then getting better price for the farmers. I have a question on the third aspects, which is really challenging. We have pressure groups. One is, of course, the farmers about whom we are talking. And the next one is the middlemen. And the last one and most powerful group is the consumers. Of course, getting better price for the farmers, there are models which we are experimenting in India, like farmers, producers, companies, and then farm to fork, etc. But is there any other model that we have not experimented, but which is highly successful in other countries, which ensures better price for the farmers and strikes a balance between the interests of these three groups: the farmers, the middlemen, and the consumers, Professor?
I'm happy to answer that question. In fact, some of the models that we are still not exploring is this forward linkages, what we call commodity markets, and it is also a tricky business. In advanced countries, you will see farmers forward trading their commodities, and that way the markets kind of determine and the market trends determine the prices for the farmers, for the consumers, and for the middlemen who operate. There are a lot of middlemen in forward trading also, and all three gain out of that forward trading, but all three also take some risk. So there is no marketing system that you want to make it equitable or provide fairness that is not without risk. So somebody has to take that risk in the markets all the time. Because you expect a price for your produce and then something happens in weather patterns, then who is going to, in this case, in Indian context now, farmer gets all the the losses. That is the reason why we are saying that 1/3 price increase through the mechanisms, better mechanisms for the produce guaranteed can double the farmer's income. So we need to go beyond the current debate to find innovations in markets. So one example is the forward markets that I talked about. But again, it depends on the commodity. It depends on the storage structures that we have. To give an example, in potato crop in Bangladesh, they have already gone in a forward marketing system. They can actually, Rangpur area I showed, there is every 3-4 villages, there is a huge public sector storage, cold storage facility. I was very impressed by the investment the Bangladesh government has made. And the farmers are able to trade based on the market price at particular point in time. And they are able to take care of the seasonality of prices of potato. Potato is used very highly in Bangladeshi cuisine. And that's another example of how to increase the infrastructure and give the infrastructure back to the farmers so that they can avoid the complications that comes through the middlemen purchasing and exploitation.
Suresh, my compliments. It was a very interesting journey around the globe. You took us to many countries and showed extension systems, how they are working. And especially one of the example which you gave in Brazil, a retired extension functionaries, he take up a paid extension service. Very interesting examples. But I see you a proud extension worker in you. Of course, so you blended economics with extension. That is what has to happen in the field today. If you are not blending economics with every technology, the cost benefit ratio is not worked out even at the stage of generating technology. We are missing that point actually. I think this economics point has to come at the stage of generating technology and also at the stage of disseminating technology. And your extension transformation slide was very good. And you clearly showed farmers, producers, companies, they are going to play a very important role in modern agriculture. So I think it reconfirm that, whatever the steps we are taking, we are in the right direction. Maybe self-propelling farmers, producers, companies, which can substitute agribusiness companies which supply inputs and also substitute the market players. On the other hand, probably they address all needs of farmers. Maybe down the line 10-20 years we are going to see that kind of farmers producers organization. Rightly you have predicted. I think we are in the right step. And you also opened up several other opportunities, like for example you gave the example of US landscaping. This is not addressed by an extension worker. It's also a money earning opportunity for any agriculture graduate. So similarly, agritourism, many activities. And of course, we want to create young agriculture. No, I don't think we can live with old agriculture. When I say young, it is modern, technology driven. If we have to change agriculture, we have to change extension worker. Capacity building plays very important role. I think that is the beginning of changing agriculture. So very interesting, and there are a lot of takeaway for extension worker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sir, thank you for a very wonderful informative session. So I just wanted to ask about the Brazil model. The grant, how they are giving, how they are selecting. Is there any details of such model? Are people are willing to pay money for the extension services? If so, what kind of crops they are paying, or what kind of technology they are paying. That information, if you are having, kindly share it. Second thing is, sir, as you said, in the developing country, any model, whatever we are discussing, ICT model, market-led model, many experiments are there, and it is very, very suitable everywhere. Whether Malawi model is very well suitable to India, or Indian model is very well suitable to Malawi. So, because almost situations are same. But is there any model from the developed countries which can be suitable to country like ours? That is also another question. Third one is, sir, many of these experiments are done by the externally funded projects. But when the fund is there, it is working well, very successful. And after fund is over, the sustainability is the major problem. So if the sustainability is not there, even if we experiment and develop a model, what is the utility of that? So what is your suggestion for maintaining the sustainability of such models?
Yeah, very good question, Dr. Balasubramanian. The important thing about the Brazil model is the funds are given, for example, from the central ministry in our terminology to the state level ministry. Completely states run the extension program for the agrarian sector, not for the commercial. Commercial is a different and it's going to be in India also, as we emerge into a emerging economy. We are also going to see this commercialized agriculture taking on its own and leaving behind a group of farmers that we need to take care of it. And in that context, to some extent, this FBOs can address those needs. But in the Brazilian model, what they have done is the extension worker who is, I gave an example of a retired extension worker. It may not be a retired extension worker. It could be a social worker. It could be somebody who is interested in solving people's problems. So they can also hire their own extension worker and apply for a project. So take an example of panchayat in our parlance, Indian parlance. In the panchayat level, you can work with the panchayat leader, elected leader, and say, hey, I will help you to apply for a program from Government of India or state government, and we take money for the next 5 years, because panchayats are also given money through part of their budgeting. So any individual a social entrepreneur can come up with, I want to introduce the self-help programs or whatever agricultural extension program in my community, and let's apply for a grant. And that can really work in the Indian context. In fact, I've been talking about it for quite some time. Then what is required from extension system is to see whether that extension is done properly. And then you become more or less making sure the regulatory body should be in place, right? So that's one. The second lesson that you asked, what can we learn from the developed countries? There are quite a few you can learn. For example, Netherlands, when I visited the farms there, the farm extension worker actually earn his living by doing the service first. The salary comes after how many farmers he has met with, how many farmers have given him the certification that they have benefited from him, and he takes that certification back to the national system and takes the salary depending on the number of farmers he has met, number of problems he has solved. So you can see that performance oriented, and they are not government workers anymore. They are independently registered extension workers in some areas, and the government publishes their names in the catalog, and people can select anyone they want. So it is a competition among the extension workers to fight for the money that they want to earn. And so they give the better services to the farmers, and the farmers are in control in terms of what they really want. And the government need not worry about whether the extension worker is doing the job or not. If he's not doing the job, the farmer is not going to give the certificate that he has done the work. And the number of certificates that he collects translates into number of hours translate into money, and the money that he gets in his bank account. So I like that model. And in fact, China really cleverly, in even 10 years ago, China adopted that model. And in China, it's a hybrid model. China still pays the extension workers the basic salary. And they have, China has 1 million extension workers, 1 million, throughout China. And the Chinese extension worker also, they are given the farmers are given coupons in China. And for every farmer, they are giving 10 coupons throughout the crop season. And that coupon can be given to any extension worker they call within their area. So the extension workers, on top of the basic salary, which they have to do some basic work in the office, to earn a real money, to earn real living, they have to go out there looking for farmers and solving the farmers and collect that coupons from the farmers and submit it in the office to collect the money. So this is a hybrid model of, we say farmer extension worker not having enough income, that's why they are not going to the field. Extension workers are poorly paid. All these things are kind of sorted out in that model. So that's another model that is emerging that may be useful for Indian context, at least in the programmatic context. For example, the NABARD introduces a FBO concept, right? So in that FBO system, you can say, hey, farmers are given 10 coupons, and the extension workers who are in that area can go and serve them. The retired extension workers, for example.
A valuable resource. Dr. Bala, you would like to say about Seva? Maybe relevant in this context.
Yes, sir. Actually, similarly, sir, actually, I think you may be knowing, managers started a Seva, an online platform called Service Extension for Voluntary Association. So, as you said, in Tamil Nadu, one batch itself, so many people have retired. So, similarly, throughout the India, after DG has taken over, he felt that many scientists and extension officers from the agriculture and allied sector are retiring every year from the ICR system, Agriculture University, and department official. So we started an online platform. Any retired officials can register in that platform. So we got around 500 extension functionaries or researchers, a retired person registered in that platform. So we are making use of the services wherever there is requirement in academic and research activities and also program implementation. So that is a very good beginning we have started, sir.
Yeah, no, I want to learn more about the Seva program, and
Yes, yes.
let's also exchange ideas on that. I mean, the reason why I brought up the colleagues who are retired could be very useful resources. That, I mean, sometimes it's interesting because my own classmate is retired as a deputy director of agriculture, and I met him a couple of years ago, and he said, Suresh, I want to do something for our country, he said. And I said, what were you doing all these years? You were working for country only. No. I was working for the government. Now I really want to do something for my people. So so that is the kind of attitude people have. They feel like, okay, I could have done something better for the people. Now they are not taken seriously because they are retired, and they are not taken seriously by the government, and they are not taken seriously by the people because they don't have power or authority or resources. So they simply are a huge human resource that is being wasted. In China, these people are really active. They are active until even 80 years old. They are very useful for their community. And I also see in Indian system also, youngsters, I mean, the people who are retiring, they are taking up some local activities. It is there, but we can organize them to give them incentives and recognize them too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Dr. K.C. Gumugalmat would like to ask.
Sir, namaskar, sir. Thank you for the nice illustration of global value chain models. Sir, I just, in first part, I would like to quote some examples of value chain which have been developed in India. Like Kudumbashree in Kerala is one model which basically emphasizes on livelihoods, off-farm and on-farm activities. That is one classic example of value chain in agriculture. And Vegetable Fruit Promotion Council of Kerala. So here they have a vibrant extension system where a lead farmer leads a group of 25 to 30, and it's a federated structure at the state level. And the third example is, which is much talked in any of the forum in India as well as across the globe, is the Sahyadri Farmer Producer Company. Here, the emphasis is on advent of ICT. So they have a blockchain technology, traceability system, and many other factors. They are responsible for success of these models. Now, coming to my question, sir, there is one more model in India, contract farming. Of course, it's a debatable subject. Contract farming model is one such model where the three-pronged strategy which you suggested, it encompasses all the three models. So, any other models across the globe which are successful, so that those models can be emulated in India? Of course, this contract farming has been kept in regulatory ambit for quite some time, but there is an informal contract farming going on in India, like basmati rice in northern part of the country, and then flowers and gherkin in Karnataka. So there are many such examples, but it's a debatable subject, sir. So any other models which can suit Indian conditions?
Yeah, the contract farming has been, we have been studying contract farming for quite some time now, and there are some papers that have come up in the South Asian context. There is challenge because of even in FBOs, it's a very similar contract. FBOs is a modified version of contract farming. And I was talking the other day with the FBO organizer. He's actually a professor of extension education from Tamil Nadu, who is retired, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, who is retired. He has taken up, he organized the farmers and he applied for a FBO company. His name is Dr. Vadivel. You probably heard of him. Yeah, and we were talking about how innovative he is in bringing the success out of contract farming. So it's not just the model. It requires any model can be successful depending on how you implement, how you put the human force behind it. So the human capital or the human capacity, the skills that are needed, that is something that we sometimes overlook. You say you employ somebody and then it will run. It doesn't run that way. And so if you take, for example, the incubation systems that we have, and in one incubation center in Madurai Agriculture College, for example, my own research assistant is now the chief executive right now. And I've been continuously, weekly basis talking to him. What is his challenge and what is happening? So it's a first-hand knowledge that I'm talking about. Because it's a good thing, the WhatsApp and all, we can productively use them for understanding what's happening in the field. So in the weekends, I talk to him, and he has been giving me some challenges in the contract farming sense. Farmers, they are on contract within the FBOs, but then when the price is better in other places, they don't respect their own FBOs, contracts, and then they go sell and then say, sir, somebody came and asked for me, I gave the products. So what happens in that context? What happens? These FBOs keep failing all the time. So you have these structural issues that need to be addressed. And how can we address through extension is a good question. We can address through extension by training the extension workers to become social entrepreneurs. And they have to be incentivized. If you give, like, okay, your monthly salary is 15,000 rupees, go be an extension worker for this FBO, and they will be another extension worker. They will take the salary, and there is no big motivation. Even if you set the target, if the farmers don't sell it to them, how can they get the product, right? Because so the contract farm relationship, farmer extension worker relationship has to be built organically in this FBOs. That's one element right now we are missing. In fact, I keep telling, when I make lectures about FBOs, I keep telling, I appreciate the FBO Academy and manage. People should send everybody there. I keep doing advertisement for you. But but that's the real need of the day. The academy like FBO Academy, and I've not studied your detailed curriculum and things like that. How do you produce an extension worker out of that, who can handle not just the salary level job, but to be dynamically engaging with farmers, and you can see that an example of entrepreneurs who are on the field. I met with another young fellow who just started 1 year ago aggregating coconuts he's also in WhatsApp with me. I talk to him regularly. He just started. He's about 35 years old. He just started right in front of my eyes 2 years ago in what is that, Pollachi district. If you remember, that's a lot of coconut there. And he went there in a crowded market. But he did three things. He promised the farmers right price. He said, above the price that local purchases, I will give you. He promised and he delivered that price. Second, he gave the money right the same evening in their bank account. And third, he taught the farmers to distinguish the quality of the product, coconut. And he said, don't pay this, then don't sell this for this price. I mean, so he was very open with them. So he quickly gathered 1,000 coconut farmers to purchase from. They are loyal to him. Now, just last week, he went to Iran to made a deal with the Iranian company to export coconut from Pollachi. I mean, I'm just giving you a quick example of how a single individual could make a quick success. He's, of course, MSc in agribusiness management. He knows a little bit of subject, but then it requires the skill to organize. And so, how do we use the academies like FBO academies to develop that kind of inspiring leaders, inspiring people coming out of the academy? So I would love to come and talk to your academy at least one session when you organize. Please let me know, because I also want to interact with the academy participants and what for my own, as you can see, I'm also learning all the time. If I don't learn, I cannot share my knowledge with others. So I need to be on top of the game. So that's what I would say. We have challenges in FBO, but we have to address them. Otherwise, 5 years down the road, we will say, oh boy, FBO is failing. No, it's not failing. It's failing because we are not identifying the gaps and fixing them. And we should do that. And when I say we, the colleagues in manage and people like us, we are at the higher level of view. We have a better view of what's happening. So we need to help them.
Thank you, sir.
Doctor, for your information, we are introducing a certificate course for CEOs of FPOs in FPO management this year.
No,
that's that leadership plays very important role.
I agree.
And, if he is enterprising and if he knows, agribusiness background, preparing a good plan and its implementation, that will benefit entire group. So it is a 45 days program, and along with attachment to a very successful FPOs also. So, and these certified people can be absorbed by FPOs as CEOs. They're trained people. There is no experimentation.
Correct. No, it's a good innovation. Very good. That's what we need to make the whole FBO system and we need FBO system in order to solve all the marketing problems that we have been having for many years. And in order to make the FBO successful, that's why I appreciate this academy that you have. And really, we need to make that as very successful as well. So that when they have academy certification, that means that's a brand that they can sell. It's like Microsoft certification, right? So they can sell. So that's the key there. Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Sir, to add to what our Director General sir told, for public extension system here at Manage, for the past 1 decade, we are conducting orientation of this production agencies towards marketing. So number of capacity building programs we have conducted, and in 2017, I remember we wrote one concept note on setting up of marketing cell in production departments, agriculture and allied departments. See, what is happening in India is marketing department is functioning in isolation and production department is functioning in isolation. So
Right.
marketing department, they don't bother about marketing extension, except a few states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Maharashtra, where a bit of marketing extension is done. But in rest of the rest part of the country, marketing extension is not done by marketing department,
Yeah.
neither by
Mhm.
marketing department nor by production department. So that effort we are making, and we are conducting number of capacity building programs, and we are writing policy papers on these issues, sir.
Very good. Very good. Happy to look at those papers whenever you.
Yeah, sir. I'll share it with you, sir, and I'll ask your inputs also for that, sir. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
We are now concluding the session. Sir, your talk was very impressive and very, very informative, sir. Actually, it is a thought-provoking session, we should say. Sir, you said in the beginning itself that goals need to be set, but they need to be translated into action and at the farmer's field, not in our offices or in organizations, but at the farmer's field. And then farmers and also in farm families. So that's how the extension system can play a very crucial role. And as a student, sir, actually as a student, we are very busy. When we are students, we are very busy in thinking about our coursework and how to complete the practicals, how to get good grades and all that. But you told that as a student, you around 3 to 3.5 decades ago, you started thinking about nutrition-oriented agriculture. And also you said that your focus and attention was on farmers' issues as a student. So I think this is a great lesson, sir, how you can amalgamate both your coursework and also your thoughts into farmers' issues. So that's I felt very touched, sir, by that. And you spoke many things about three-lens strategy, extension policies should how they should reflect, and then also about the current trends in the global systems, and how market-led extension and global models and experiences, and about how agrarian policies changed over a period of time. And sir, broad policies for recommendations for extension at national level and specific policy recommendations you spoke about. And in the institutional lessons, you also talked about the capacity building, which manage also is playing a very key role in building the capacities of agricultural extension professionals, both at middle level and senior levels. And in the way forward, you spoke about inviting private players into extension and substitution, complementarity, coordination. Now it is the order of the day, and I think we will be going in that direction in future. And emergence of opportunities and focus is on serving the marginalized. So not only looking at bringing about the productivity and production, but also looking into the concerns of the marginalized farmers. And sir, in your concluding remarks, you spoke very important points you gave about the macro system and what changes are happening and how extension has to reorient itself to suit to the needs of the emerging needs of the farmers and the public at large. So this is a very enlightening session, sir. Thank you so much. On behalf of our Director General and Managed Family, we thank you very sincerely for taking your time to give this wonderful session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. On behalf of entire Managed Family, again, I would like to thank you. And we have colleagues from EAE, Samiti, Agriculture Universities, and managed facilitators. Many more stakeholders are there. It is a very limited audience. This will be converted into an edited film and it will go to lakhs of extension workers later. I would like to draw your attention finally is some of the new ideas which we are trying in Manage, like Manage FPO Academy, Seva Manage, then Manage CSR Forum, then Manage Agri Film Festival. Next month we are going to organize Agriculture Film Festival, and many more, facilitators development program. We are also designing a new induction program. You told a very important thing. If they are not trained regularly, not trained and introduced into the field, extension workers, it is very difficult. We are just trying to address that. Probably we will be seeking your guidance, because you have vast experience, global experience, and agriculture is global. Whatever small things we do, it may be useful to other part of the world also, because ensuring global food security is a responsibility of we all people. Maybe we can help each other. We would like to learn more from you. Thank you very much for your valuable time. I know the time is very hard. Still you are sitting and answering all the questions. And if we allow this session to continue, I think we need another 2 hours. I am sure that many of the questions are in pipeline, but we will continue and take some other opportunity again to interact and explore more knowledge. Thank you very much. Thanks for
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.